Translator's Note and Introduction of the Perfumed Garden. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Alia Makki. The Perfumed Garden by Sheikh Nafzawi. Translated by Richard Burton. Notes of the translator respecting the Sheikh Nafzawi. The name of the Shaykh has become known to posterity as the author of this work, which is the only one attributed to him. In spite of the subject matter of the book, and the manifold errors found in it and caused by the negligence and ignorance of the copyists, it is manifest that this treatise comes from the pen of a man of great erudition, who had a better knowledge in general of literature and medicine than is commonly found with Arabs. According to the historical notice contained in the first leaves of the manuscript, and notwithstanding the apparent error respecting the name of the Bey who was reigning in Tunis, it may be presumed that this work was written in the beginning of the 16th century, about the year 925 of the Hijrah. As regards to the birthplace of the author, it may be taken for granted, considering that the Arabs habitually join the name of their birthplace to their own, that he was born at Nafzawa, a town situated in the district of that name on the shore of the lake Sabkha in the south of the kingdom of Tunis. The Shaykh himself records that he lived in Tunis, and it is most probable the book was written in that city. According to tradition, a particular motive induced him to undertake a work entirely at variance with his simple taste and retired habits. His knowledge of law and literature, as well of medicine, having been reported to the Bey of Tunis, this ruler wished to invest him with the office of Qadi, although he was unwilling to occupy himself with public functions. As he, however, desired not to give the Bey cause for offence, whereby he might have incurred danger, he merely requested a short delay, in order to be able to finish a work which he had in hand. This having been granted, he set himself to compose the treatise, which was then occupying his mind, and which, becoming known, drew so much attention upon the author that it became henceforth impossible to confide to him functions of the nature of those of a Qadi. But this version, which is not supported by any authenticated proof, and which represents the Shaykh Nafzawi as a man of light morals, does not seem to be admissible. One need only a glance at the book to be convinced that its author was animated by the most praiseworthy intentions, and that, far from being in fault, he deserves gratitude for the services he has rendered to humanity. Contrary to the habits of Arabs, there exists no commentary on this book. The reason may perhaps be found in the nature of the subject of which it treats, and which may have frightened unnecessarily the serious and the studious. I say unnecessarily, because this book, more than any other, ought to have commentaries. Grave questions are treated in it, and open out a large field for work and meditation. What can be more important, in fact, than the study of the principles upon which rests the happiness of man and woman, by reason of their mutual relations, relations which are themselves dependent upon the character, health, temperament, and the constitution, all of which it is the duty of philosophers to study? In doubtful and difficult cases, and where the ideas of the author did not seem to be clearly set out, I have not hesitated to look for enlightenment to the savants of sundry confessions, and by their kind assistance many difficulties, which I believed insurmountable, were conquered. I am glad to render them my thanks. Amongst the authors who have treated of similar subjects, there is not one that can be entirely compared with the Shaykh, for his book reminds you at the same time of Aretin, of the Book of Conjugal Love, and of Rabelais. But what makes this treatise unique as a book of its kind is the seriousness with which the most lascivious and obscene matters are presented. It is evident that the author is convinced of the importance of his subject, and that the desire to be of use to his fellow-men is the sole motive of his efforts. With a view to giving more weight to his recommendations, he does not hesitate to multiply his religious citations, and in many cases invokes even the authority of the Koran, the most sacred book of the Muslims. It may be assumed that this book, without being exactly a compilation, is not entirely due to the genius of the Shaykh Nafzawi. and that several parts may have been borrowed from Arabian and Indian writers. For instance, all the record of Mu'aylima and of Jeddah is taken from the work of Muhammad bin Jarir al-Tabari. The description of the different positions of coition, as well as the movements applicable to them, are borrowed from Indian works. Finally, the book Birds and Flowers by Izz-ad-Din Muqaddiki seem to have been consulted with respect to the interpretation of dreams. But an author certainly is to be commended for having surrounded himself with the lights of former savants, and it would be ingratitude not to acknowledge the benefit which his books have conferred upon people who were still in their infancy in the art of love. It is only to be regretted that this work, so complete in many respects, is defective in so fair, as it makes no mention of a custom too common with the Arabs not to deserve particular attention. I speak of the taste so universal with the old Greeks and Romans, namely, the preference they give to a boy before a woman, or even to treat the latter as a boy. There might have been given on this subject sound advice, as well with regard to the pleasures mutually enjoyed by the women called tribades. The same reticence has been observed by the author with regard to bestiality. Nevertheless, he does speak in one story, i.e. the history of Zahra, in the concluding chapter of his work, of the mutual caresses of women, and he relates an anecdote concerning a woman who provoked the caresses of an ass, which has been eliminated from the present edition, thus revealing that he knew of such matters. Lastly, the Shaykh does not mention the pleasures which the mouth or the hand of a pretty woman can give, nor the cunnilingus. What may have been the motive of these omissions? The author's silence cannot be attributed to ignorance, for in the course of his work he has given proofs of an erudition too extended and various to permit a suspicion of his knowledge. Should we look for the cause of this gap to the contempt which the Mussulman in reality feels for women, and owing to which he may think that it would be degrading to his dignity as a man to descend to caresses otherwise regulated than by the laws of nature? Or did the author, perhaps, avoid the mention of similar matters out of fear that he might be suspected of sharing tastes which many people look upon as depraved? However this may be, the book contains much useful information and a large number of curious cases, and I have undertaken the translation because, as the Shaykh Nafzawi says in his preamble, I swear before God, certainly the knowledge of this book is necessary. It will only be the shamefully ignorant, the enemy of all science, who does not read it, or who turns it into ridicule. End of Translator's Note. Introduction. General remarks about coition. Praise be given to God, who has placed man's greatest pleasure in the natural parts of woman, and has destined the natural parts of man to afford the greatest enjoyment to woman. He has not endowed the parts of woman with any pleasurable or satisfactory feeling until the same have been penetrated by the instrument of the male, and likewise the sexual organs of man know neither rest nor quietness until they have entered those of the female. Hence the mutual operation there takes place between the two actors, wrestling, intertwinings, a kind of animated conflict. Owing to the contact of the lower parts of the two bellies, the enjoyment soon comes to pass. The man is at work as with a pestle, while the woman seconds him by lascivious movements. Finally comes the ejaculation. The kiss on the mouth, on the two cheeks, upon the neck, as well as the sucking up of fleshed lips, are gifts of God, destined to provoke erection at the favourable moment. God also is it who has embellished the chest of the woman with breasts, has furnished her with a double chin, and has given brilliant colours to her cheeks. He has also gifted her with eyes that inspire love, and with eyelashes like polished blades. He has furnished her with a rounded belly and a beautiful navel, and with a majestic crupper, and all these wonders are borne up by the thighs. It is between these latter that God has placed the arena of the combat. When the same is provided with ample flesh, it resembles the head of a lion. It is called the vulva. Oh, how many men's deaths lie at her door! amongst them how many heroes! God has furnished this object with a mouth, a tongue, two lips. It is like the impression of the hoof of a gazelle in the sands of the desert. The whole is supported by two marvelous columns, testifying to the might and the wisdom of God. They are not too long nor too short, and they are graced with knees, calves, ankles, and heels, upon which rest precious rings. And the Almighty has plunged woman into a sea of splendors, of voluptuousness, and of delights, and covered her with precious vestments, with brilliant girdles and provoking smiles. So let us praise and exalt Him who has created woman and her beauties, with her appetizing flesh, who has given her hales, a beautiful figure, a bosom with breasts which are swelling, and amorous ways which awaken desires. The Master of the universe has bestowed upon the empire of seduction all men, weak or strong, are subjected to a weakness for the love of woman. Through woman we have society or dispersion, sojourn or emigration. The state of humility in which are the hearts of those who love and are separated from the object of their love makes their hearts burn with love's fire. They are oppressed with a feeling of servitude, contempt, and misery. They suffer under the vicissitudes of their passion, and all this as consequence of their burning desire for contact. I, the servant of God, am thankful to Him that no one can help falling in love with beautiful women, and that no one can escape the desire to possess them, neither by change, nor flight, nor separation. I testify that there is only one God, and that He has no associate. I shall adhere to this precious testimony to the day of the Last Judgment. I likewise testify to our Lord and Master Muhammad, the servant and ambassador